Title: Remember Me. Written by Iris.
Unlike what most people believe about Nakahara Chuya, even though he sported a constant frown across his face that he seemed to carry with pride, anger was quite rare for him to carry around with it. Anger made him feel vulnerable, dangerous, in a way that he didn't like. It deprived him of control, agency, dominance. It was a paralyzing emotion that rendered him helpless. He didn't need anger to get anything done. In fact, Chuya was beyond that. However, that night, when he waited 2 hours for you to show up and you didn't, Chuya felt a different sort of anger. An ire born out of devastating humiliation was no ire at all. It was a rage nestled in a dark place, reminding him of the corruption that he desperately wished to forsake. Chuya not only felt humiliated for being stood up, he felt a deep, growing sorrow. A sorrow that didn't involve tears or screaming, but silence, which was the worst indicator. Quietly, he left the bar where he had first met you and walked out only to notice that it was raining. One of the things he prided about himself was his ability to deduce things quickly. Sure, he wasn't as witty as Daze was, not that he'd ever admit that, but he was smart where he needed to be. Recalling details about you that most people would have forgotten seemed simple, not because he was as talented as he thought he was. No, it was because you were impossible to forget, a drug that he just couldn't shake off. His legs then carried him toward an area that seemed so familiar that he felt a wave of nausea itch at his throat. Chuya clawed at his collarbones to stop the feeling from spreading, but the nausea had reached his head and he felt as uncomfortable as when he had too much wine in a single night, on an empty stomach. Reaching a particular door that screamed at him for some godforsaken reason, Chuya didn't bother knocking. The confidence bubbled inside his chest alongside the nausea. He spotted you on the couch, a bottle of wine in your hands, the wine he had recommended to you the night before, and your eyes widened at his sudden appearance. Uh, Chuya? You fucking stood me up. How did you remember where I lived? Perhaps it was your choice of words. He was always good at guessing what people meant from the words they used. It had always been a certain gift he carried with himself. However, Chuya didn't care right then. The ire rendered him blind. He rushed toward you and knocked the glass off your hand, having it spill all over the carpeted floor before grabbing your collar and pulling you close. He was seething, but for some reason, just the sight of you, surprised and quite possibly drunk from the wine, burned down his ire as if it were embers sparking off a tree trunk on a rainy night. Your silky robe slid off his hands with ease as he let you go, before darting his gaze away from you. Uh, Chuya, I don't fucking understand it either, alright? He said, eyes stuck to the spilled wine on the floor. I don't understand what this is. I don't understand why I can't let it go. I've had sex with women whose name I don't even bother to remember, but I can't forget your stupid fucking face, or your stupid fucking smile, or the way you annoyed the crap out of me. I can't forget how you'd rather drink cheap wine at the store and drink that wine that I fucking recommended to you in secret. So, I know there's something there, alright? Chuya, I'm sorry. He looked at you with a deep frown. What is it? What is it then? Was sex bad? Was it me? Your hand sprung to his face and it hit him again. The wave of deja vu, the feeling of your skin against his. It was intoxicating. He breathed in deeply, trying to recollect where he had smelt you before, for it to have become so deeply rooted in his mind. How is it? You began to mutter something under your breath, but Chuya's hand lifted your chin and forced you to meet his gaze. Chuya, I'm sorry. It's not that. It's not any of that. You are amazing. You are. I love you. His eyes widened. Words that he normally would have run away from suddenly felt like home. He swore he had heard them before. He had heard them from you a long time ago, and the smell of it resonated with the way you carried yourself. Apricots and honey. A smell so utterly natural, yet devastatingly intoxicating. Chuya was certain that whatever it was had to be love, because if it wasn't, then he didn't know what love was. Moving in, Chuya's lips captured your own, and your hands quickly reached his hair before pulling him closer as if your life depended on it, a lovely trick designed by nature. Chuya used it to silence you from uttering words right then. There was no need for words when action spoke so loudly. It didn't take long for his hands to reach your neck, passing your body to his, and for this, he led further to a place of no return. Not that you minded, of course. When Chuya woke up, he smelled you. There was no long forgotten feeling. There was no remnant that he desperately needed to remember. There was just you. You were breathing beside him. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open, looking as peaceful as he had ever seen you. A sight he believed he had seen many times before, the intensity of which made him wonder if this was what people meant when they said soulmates existed. Perhaps he knew you in a past life and had reunited with you in this one. Whatever it was, he felt content. His hand reached to brush a strand of stray hair off your cheek before noticing you inch closer towards him, blinding him with your scent again. As established before, Chuya was good at guessing what people meant by the choice of their words. He instantly remembered something odd that you had let loose the night before, something that made him wonder if there was a reason why he felt so intensely for you. Reaching forward and placing his hand at the back of your head, he pulled you to his neck, feeling your arms wrap around his naked chest. Chuya's gaze fixed at the wall behind you before trying to decipher just what you had meant by, "How did you remember where I live?" A second later, you stirred before looking up at him, and he cocked an eyebrow at your emotionless stare. "God help me," you said. "You're so pretty." "Don't call me pretty," he argued, and you swore he could kill you with his morning voice, and you'd be glad. "Hey," he began, clearing his throat. "What did you mean by what you said yesterday? That I love you?" "Ah, Chuya, don't you know what that means?" "No, idiot. You asked me how I remember where you live. Why would you ask me that unless I..." His eyes widened. "Unless I somehow forgot." Wrong choice of words, I guess. Forgive me. I was down 3 glasses of wine before you got here. Chuya laughed at your words right then before pulling you closer, feeling more content with your explanation than the gnawing suspicion that raged inside his brain. He wondered if love was an emotion that would constantly give him question every action, every thought, and every moment that occurred. But what did he know of love? But then again, what didn't he? Blissful days were cursed, or so he believed. Chuya noticed how quickly they passed. He could on some occasions watch the days as they passed, exiting his body and seeing himself interact with the everydayness of things. The only thing that brought him to life was to return home to you. Even with the ever-growing blissfulness, Chuya didn't malinger. However, he couldn't shake off the feeling that every word that exited your mouth was a red herring, something that you were deviating from a fact that he had missed. He hated feeling like he was missing an important detail, but each time you smiled at him or stole a kiss, Chuya was taken aback to the very moment he fell for you. Suddenly, as if his mind was taking him somewhere else, he recalled something. He didn't know if it was entirely a made-up scenario or something that happened in a past life, because if it happened in this one, he'd remember. He spotted you stumbling in front of a broken wine bottle, the owner of the store screaming in your ear, and you were trying to sound convincing. Chuya watched himself walk over to you and turn to the owner of the store before quickly understanding what had happened. You had dropped an expensive bottle of wine and you had no means to pay for it. It caused him to chattel a tad bit before throwing some money, or more, at the owner, causing you to turn to him with wide eyes. "It's alright," he had said to you. "I've got money." Chuya watched as he walked away from you, but missed how you had removed one of your shoe and thrown it at the back of his head. He froze before turning to you with a deadly expression, but instantly blinked when he noticed how heavily you were blushing before, thinking, "Holy shit, she's cute," before having you walk over to him and scream, "What do you think you're doing, pretty face?" Chuya stared at you as you chopped onions without shedding a single tear. He had no clue how you had learned the art to do so, but boy was he glad you knew how to cook. You reached forward before using your wrist to tape off a tear from his eye, scrunching a bit before realizing the onions must have done it. You giggled before turning back to them, chopping them quietly. That wasn't it, Chuya thought, narrowing his eyes. That wasn't how he met you. He met you at the bar where he spotted you drinking cheap wine and he walked over to you and recommended something else. He didn't meet you in a wine store. He didn't have a shoe thrown at the back of his head. Yet his hand reached the back of his head and his fingers grazed the area where the shoe supposedly landed. It feels like it actually happened. He shook his head before entwining his hands around your waist, before kissing the back of your neck. He wasn't usually so affectionate, but you didn't mind. Every time Chuya touched you, it left scorch marks that were welcome. It was passion breathing fire, reflecting the color of his hair, the aura of his heart. "What are you thinking?" you hummed, unaware of how intensely Chuya was watching you. Nothing." Blissful days were cursed. Chuya knew this for a fact. He could watch happy days pass by with him barely breathing, existing, feeling. But the bad ones lasted ages. He remembered walking into his own home one day, drenched in blood, covered with soot and mud. The urge to feel human contact was strong just then. He knew he could call you. He knew that he could rely on you, especially since you had said the words, "I love you," to him. Over and over again, despite him having not said it in return. He wondered if that bothered you. He wondered if that made you want to leave him, but you made no sign so far that you were displeased. He watched you like a hawk, after all, with that growing suspicion that drowned him on nights like these. He rang you in a moment before feeling the phone vibrate next to his ear, his eyes ghosting on a dark patch in front of him. He needed your hands, your body, the smell of your hair. He needed the familiar apricot and honey to cover his nostrils whole. He needed you. Just before asking why you lied.
"Chuya, it's 4 a.m. What? I need to see you."
You were quiet on the other end, wondering if he had figured it out. He must have, you thought. A bitter smile formed on your lips.
"I'll be there in a no."
He wasn't going to risk it.
"I'm coming to you."